Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of the RiverRatLabs. We are going to be going over all about spawn fishing for largemouth bass today. So yeah, we're going to be diving in deep and all types of techniques, spots, locations for largemouth bass in the spawn. But yeah, let's get right into it. Alright guys, so the first technique we're going to be going over for the spawn in largemouth bass is the frog. You might ask, why the frog in the spawn? It's a very interesting thing I've kind of came to realize in the spawn. The fish really do love the frog in the spawn. There's something about it going over their bed when they're spawning in the weeds and the thicker stuff where you can't get to other baits with, like the Texas rig or the drop shot or Nik Rig that we'll talk about later in the video. Sometimes the frog will get them to commit. So I just normally use the popping frogs for this because there's not as much grass earlier in the spring. So the frog I like to use is the Spro popping frog 65 size. That's the best size and the right frog for the job. So yeah, really any of your popping frogs will get the job done. But yeah, that's the spawn fishing, throwing around frogs. That's just a technique that's kind of overlooked, and you guys should definitely try it. So yeah, that's a little sleeper technique. All right, guys, so the next technique we're going to go over is Texas rigs on the bed. So now we're going to talk about on the bed. So the Texas rig is such a good bait on the bed because it is so weedless. It's incredible. Like, you can fish the Texas rig anywhere, any bed location, stumps, grass, rock, docks, any location, the Texas rig will get the job done. I probably use this bait about 50% of the time when I'm bed fishing. This is the first bait I'll throw into the bed because it's a little bigger and just, really efficient with a bait caster. I can hook them and land them really easy, a lot better with the bait caster. So I'll fish the bed, through all the way with the Texas rig, then I'll move on to the bait. So yeah, some of the baits I like to use for the Texas rig is this G-Crack Bellows Gill is a great bed bait, and the XO Lures Muscleback Craw along with the Adrenaline Craw. Those two are phenomenal bed fishing baits. Normally, you can mix in your white colors when the fish are less pressured. When you want to be able to see the bait with your eyes sight fishing, you're really going to want to use the white colors and brighter colors. But when you're on the fish, they're super spooky, pressured area, you're going to want to go towards more of the natural colors and make them commit that way. So yeah, and of course, bed fishing, you always need a good pair of glasses. These are my baseball glasses, but you always need a good pair of sunglasses that are polarized when you're bed fishing. That improves seeing in the water a ton. So yeah, that's the first technique, Texas rigs. But yeah, that's pretty much what we do for that. And like the sizes and the hook weights depends on, again, how you're fishing, how big the fish are, all that kind of stuff. But normally a 4-aught hook with 3/8 ounce, 1/4 ounce weight, sometimes even bigger, 5/8, ½ ounce, doesn't really matter. Based on where you're fishing, you make that decision on yourself. So yeah, that's Texas rig for you. Now let's get into the finesse side of things, which is Nik Rigs, drop shots, and whack rigs. Alright guys, so the most high percentage bites I've had on the bed is definitely a drop shot. Something about the drop shot in the bed, if you think about it, I'll pull it out here. When it sits up on the bed, the weight falls and the worm sits in front of the bass's face. And something about the worm sitting in the face just makes the bass mad and makes him want to eat it. So I've had a lot of success fishing the Texas rig worm, or the Texas rig finesse drop shot worm in the beds whenever there's grass around or stumps and all that kind of stuff. And then when you're fishing for open water fish, you just go to the circle hook on the drop shot. So yeah, like, and I'll fish any sort of small bait on there, like the X-Zone finesse slammer, X-Zone hot shot minnow, X-Zone Ned Zone. You just thread on the bait, and it's just really, the bait isn't as important as the technique when you're fishing from. So yeah, that's pretty much the drop shot on the bed. Like I said before, it's just a great bait that sits perfectly in the bed, perfectly in their face, and makes them want to commit. So yeah, there's drop shot fishing, and yeah, just use, for all these rods, just use your your standard rods, your drop shot rods, Texas rig rods, just the same rods you use for normal techniques. We're just bed fishing. So yeah, there's drop shots, but now let's get into Nik Rigs. Okay guys, so the fourth technique we're going to be talking about is Nik Rigs. Nik Rig, I've actually already caught some fish on this here on the beds really early. But this bait is really awesome because, again, if you think about it, it sits up straight in the bed like this. So when you have a Nik Rig, line's pulling it, you're working it, and it sits up. And that just drives the bass absolutely crazy. I've had so much success with this fishing for largemouth because a Ned rig sometimes it gets mucked up in the weeds and in the rocks and in the stumps, versus this weedless Nico will get through that stuff. So yeah, my favorite bait, and really the only bait I use for Nik Rig fishing now, is the Nico Ned Zone from X-Zone. Just a confidence thing. I mean, it's a great bait. Really, any of your Nik Rig baits will work for the situation. Just make sure they're floating. Along with a drop shot too, you want a floating worm so it stays, horizontal in the water column. It doesn't float down to the bed or it doesn't sink. Like when you're standing up, you want it to stand straight up or sit horizontal. So yeah, in X-Zone, all the X-Zone baits float that are finesse baits. So yeah, that's really cool about X-Zone. But yeah, that's Nico rig fishing. Again, you make the decision for the drop shot Nico rig. You kind of go in the order that I'm going: drop shot Nico, and then the last technique is wacky rigs. So wacky rigs, this is probably the most classic springtime bait when you're just casting around on largemouth, just around beds, and you're like just trying to find them. And once you do locate them, then you can pitch this in. But this isn't as efficient. You gotta let it wait and sit. But this can be really good because it sits in the strike zone for a long time. But this is normally the last bait I'll go to for bed fishing. But yeah, I really love the wacky Senko. Like I said, just sits horizontal, fall slow on their face, and normally you can get them commit on the very last bait. So yeah, that's the wacky setup. But those 5 baits, I guarantee you will get a good chance at catching the bass between the Texas rig, the Nico rig, drop shot, and the wacky rig for sight fishing. When you're just casting around, the frog is great too. But yeah, now let's get into when you can't see the bass actually with your eyes, what to do when it's dirty water, what to do when you just can't see them or they're spookish. And yeah, let's dive into that. Okay guys, so it is super challenging to catch fish in the spawn when you can't see them with their eyes. 1, because they're not actually looking to bite, and 2, because it's such a small area to focus on. So I'm gonna talk about this with the guys that don't have like live scope perspective mode, and what I do when I can't see them because I don't really have live scope either. So I've kind of learned to not fish with live scope around the beds. So yeah, basically what I do is if I'll locate pieces of structure first. So whether it's a dock, I think they're going to be spawning on docks, I think they're going to be spawning on grass clumps, rocks, stumps, whatever it may be. I'm going to locate that, and then if I think there's a bed there, I'll first cast in there just like I'm flipping normally, and if I get a bite and I set the hook, he's not there, I throw in there again, get a bite, or I feel something touch it, I know there's a bed there. So then I'll get out my setups and I'll go through that Texas rig. I'll get in there a few times, whether it's a stump or a dock. If it doesn't bite, then I'll throw a Nico rig in there, and then most likely I can get them to bite on the secondary bait. So really the Texas rig is so crucial for that. That's basically the only bait I use when I'm looking for them. That and a jig, of course, too. Black and blue jig, like in the dirty water, black and blue Texas rig. You can just rotate them, and you're really just looking for feeling beds too. If you're dragging it, you can feel the little depression in the ground sometimes if they make a deep bed or if it's a big fish. And yeah, but really the Texas rig is number 1 for that. I can just be super efficient with that, find the bed, locate the bed, then go through my array of arsenals that I have for the bed fishing and just locate them and catch fish like that. So yeah, that's kind of a little rundown for that. But again, just use the same exact baits for when you see them, but just apply that to when you can't see them. It's like you're actually sight fishing, but it's a mind game is really what it is. So yeah, that's kind of a little spawn sight fishing breakdown for you guys. We're going to do a smallmouth one up on Mille Lacs once we get to it. I'm really looking forward to that video. That'll be super fun. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy the content on the RiverRats channel, our other channel. We'll be posting actual fishing of us catching fish on beds, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but that wraps up today's video of fishing in the spawn. So yeah, for largemouth bass. But hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you like this kind of content, make sure to tell us down below in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to check out our other channel. But yeah, we'll talk to you guys on the next breakdown. Peace.